Welcome to Sonara's Deep Dive.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the detailed research, the field work, all that complex information, and really boil it down to what you need to know.
And today we're diving into something truly fascinating. The spiritual world, the history, the healing practices of the sand hunter-gatherers of southern Africa, the Bushmen.
Right. We're looking at their shamanism, especially the trance practices, and also comparing them a bit with their neighbors, the Khoi people, understanding how these traditions are still alive today.
Exactly. And our information, it comes from a lot of places. Decades, really centuries of anthropological work, historical records.
Interviews, even researchers participating in healing dances.
Yes, all that. Plus, we're drawing on insights from modern San cultural centers like Kawatu, which are doing amazing work.
Okay, so let's get right to the core of it. What's the big takeaway, the thing that immediately grabs you?
For me, it's the worldview itself. You have to sort of set aside the way we think about the natural versus the supernatural. For the San, that line it isn't there.
No dividing line. That's huge because we separate those things constantly. So we're not talking about metaphor here, like feeling like a lion.
No, not at all. The sources are really clear on this. When a San healer enters a deep trance, they believe they can literally become a lion or take on its power, its essence.
Wow. Okay. That changes everything. It's not just symbolic.
It's fundamental. Understanding that blurring, that fluidity between human, animal, spirit, that's the key to their healing, their connection to the land, everything. #I. The ancient roots and philosophical foundation of San beliefs.
So to really grasp this, we need to think about time, right? How far back does this go?
Immensely far back. We're talking archaeological evidence, especially from caves along the southern African coast, suggesting a culture very, very similar to the San existed. Well, maybe 40,000, perhaps even 100,000 years ago.
100,000 years. That's almost unimaginable continuity.
It really is. It points to one of the oldest continuous cultural and spiritual traditions on the planet.
Okay, and terminology matters here. We often hear Khoi-san. Can you break that down?
Right. Khoisan is actually a compound term put together by Europeans. It combines two distinct groups. Khoi generally refers to the herding peoples, the pastoralists.
And San.
San is the term the Khoi used for the hunter-gatherers. What colonial sources often called Bushmen. We're focusing mainly on the San today.
Got it. And their religion, you mentioned it's described as simple yet complex.
Exactly that paradox. The core ethics are about sharing, community, living in balance with nature, very straightforward in a way. But the philosophy behind it, the cosmology, is incredibly deep and sophisticated.
And that connection to nature, it's not just philosophical, it's practical, right? The sources mention their tracking skills.
Oh, unbelievably attuned. Following faint signs across bare rock that most people wouldn't even see. That kind of intense observation, that dependence on reading the environment, surely feeds into their spiritual view.
That everything's connected, everything's alive.
Precisely. Which brings us to that core idea, what the anthropologist Levi Bruhl called the participatory nature of indigenous thought. There's no concept of inanimate. Everything possesses power, potency.
So no separation between natural and supernatural because everything has this inherent aliveness.
Correct. And what determines a thing's role or power?
Its form.
Exactly. Its physical form dictates its potency, its gaze, and what it can do. Think about an elephant. It's huge, strong. So naturally, it embodies massive power spiritually, too.
Okay, I see. So that links back to the lion transformation.
Right. When the shaman becomes the lion in trance, they're not just imagining it. They are adopting the lion's form and therefore accessing and wielding its specific potency, its reality. It's a literal shift in being.
That is such a different way of thinking about identity, this human-animal connection. Where does that idea originate in their beliefs?
Well, their cosmology holds that animals actually came from people, and people in turn came from animals. There's this deep shared origin story.
Which explains the rock art, right? Those figures that are part human, part animal.
Exactly, the fairy-anthropes. They often depict healers in trance, maybe doing healing.
Figures that are part human.
The art is almost a visual record of that moment of transformation, that shared essence.
And because of this shared essence, communication is possible. You mentioned a story about a porcupine.
Yes, it's a striking example. A hunter is tracking a pregnant porcupine. He stops, stares at it intensely, and then suddenly sprints off in a different direction.
Why?
Because, according to the San understanding, the pregnant porcupine, being especially potent, literally told him where he could find two other porcupines to hunt successfully.
Told him, like spoke to him.
Verbally, yes. That's the account. It wasn't just a feeling or intuition, it was direct communication, crucial for survival, stemming from that blurred identity between hunter and hunted, human and animal.
That's incredible. It really highlights the respect certain animals command.
And speaking of vital animals, the eland seems central. Absolutely paramount. The Santan are sometimes even called the people of the eland. It's crucial for survival: meat, fat, hide.
But also ritually significant.
Very much so. It plays a major role in the initiation rites for young women entering adulthood. It connects the physical sustenance with the spiritual and social fabric.
But there's a flip side to its importance, isn't there? Its potency can actually be dangerous.
Yes, exactly. The eland is considered so strong, possessing so much gaze, that its meat isn't for everyone.
Too strong. How so?
The belief is that only the elderly, who have built up their own strength or perhaps resilience over time, can handle the eland's concentrated power. If younger people eat it, the sources say they might develop a persistent cough.
So it's not just about nutrition. Eating it is like absorbing its power.
Precisely. Animal parts transfer their essence. If that essence is too potent for the person consuming it, it manifests as illness. It's a direct reflection of their cosmology form, dictates function and potency.
Okay, so if the eland holds this immense physical and ritual power, how do they access and use purely spiritual or healing power? That brings us to the healing dance, right?
Yes, the absolute core of San shamanic practice. It's a community ritual focused entirely on curing, typically held at night around a central fire.
And it's structured. How does it work?
Very structured. The women are crucial. They sit together, often shoulder to shoulder, and they provide the rhythmic foundation. They sing specific healing songs in cycles and clap complex, driving rhythms. They build the energy field, essentially.
And the healers, mostly men.
Mostly men, but women can be healers too. They dance, usually facing the fire, and the dancing becomes more and more intense as the ritual progresses.
What's the internal goal? What are they trying to achieve within themselves?
They're trying to activate and raise their inner healing energy. It's called num by the Juhoan, or tso among the Naro. The aim is to make this energy boil.
Boil. That sounds intense. Is that literal?
It's the key concept. Linguistically, the word num seems related to words meaning to boil or to be cooked. They feel this energy originating in the lower abdomen, the belly, and as they dance, fueled by the singing and clapping, this energy heats up.
Okay, so it heats up in the belly.
And then rises. It travels up the spine, through the body, getting hotter and more powerful until it reaches the head. When it boils over or breaks through at the head, that's when the healer enters the trance state, which they call ascesia.
Pikia. What does that state feel like? Is it like losing control? A seizure?
It's incredibly intense physically. Staggering, sweating profusely, sometimes blurred vision or temporary deafness, a feeling of intense heat. They might cry out in pain as the num surges. But, and this is critical, they don't completely lose control.
Ah, so it's not just being overwhelmed.
No. They retain a degree of consciousness, of agency. They're navigating this other reality, this heightened state. And it's in Dacia that they can see the spirits of the dead. They can interact with the entities believed to cause sickness.
Right, the sources mention Gawaba or Gawa, and these entities using invisible arrows to cause illness.
Yes, that's a common belief. Illness often comes from the dead or these powerful, sometimes malevolent, supernal beings, often through these tiny invisible arrows or thorns.
So the healer, now in Dakia and full of boiling num, how do they fight back? How do they cure the patient?
Well, first, the very act of achieving Dakia, the intense heat of the num, is believed to purify the healer, making them immune to the sickness they're about to tackle.
Okay, so they're protected. Then what?
Then they approach the sick person. The process is one of active transfer, often quite aggressive. They literally pull the sickness out of the patient's body and into their own.
They pull the sickness into themselves. That sounds dangerous.
It is. They often describe feeling the sickness as sharp pains shooting up their own arms as they draw it out.
And once they've drawn it into themselves, they have to get rid of it, right?
Quickly. Absolutely. It has to be expelled. There's a belief in a specific exit point, usually perceived at the junction of the neck and shoulders, like a spiritual vent, sometimes the top of the head.
How do they expel it?
Often quite dramatically. A loud shout, a gasp, maybe flinging their arms violently upwards and outwards, casting the sickness back into the darkness, away from the community.
So it's primarily this pulling or sucking out. Are there other techniques?
Yes, direct application of their own potency. They use their hands, the top of their head, sometimes even their sweat, specifically mentioned as being potent, often taken from under the armpits, and apply it directly to the sick person.
Sweat. Why sweat?
Because sweat, body dirt, perspiration, these are seen as carriers of the healer's purified essence. Their gaze, their immunity generated by the numb. Applying it transfers that protective, healing quality directly to the patient.
And their interaction with the source of the illness, say Gawaba, it's not passive.
Definitely not passive, it's confrontational. Healers will shout at the entities, argue with them, rush out into the darkness around the fire, demanding they leave the person alone. It's a spiritual battle.
Wow. There was even that account of a healer flying to heaven.
Yes, a Naro healer described, while in Dakia, traveling on the wind up to the realm of the spirits to literally retrieve the sick person's heart, which was believed to have been stolen or displaced by the entity causing the illness. It shows the immense power and agency they feel in that state.
Which all comes back to this internal power gaze. Can we pin that down a bit more? Is it like a spirit guide?
Not exactly. Gesgoksa, is described more like an internal substance, a latent potential or essence within the healer that enables all this. It's not an external spirit possessing them.
Okay, an internal substance. And the changes state.
Yes, that's key. In normal life, gaze is said to be sleeping or horizontal, dormant. The dance, the numb, wakes it up. It becomes vertical, it stands up.
Horizontal versus vertical, like inactive versus active, dead versus alive.
Pretty much. Verticality implies growth, life, movement, power. Horizontality implies stillness, potential illness, or even death. The dance physically forces this internal power to become active, to stand up.
So the physical act of stamping in the dance is literally helping the gaze to rise.
Exactly. And the language reflects this. The dance itself is often called the gaze dance or a Eurus dance. And there's a suspected link to the Kohoge Wab word gai, which means both to stamp the feet in a dance and to rise up or to grow.
So the word for the dance action might be the same as the word for the energy rising.
It seems very likely. The physical movement is the mechanism to activate the internal potency. It's all interconnected.
Okay, let's shift slightly to the Ko people, the Nama, the Damara. They also have healing traditions, like the Irus or gaze dance we just mentioned.
Yes, there are definite overlaps in the dance tradition and the concept of potency. But the Ko also have these very specialized figures, particularly the rain men and rain women.
Focus on rain, obviously critical in that environment. How do they get their power? Is it like the sand activating numb?
It's quite different, actually. The accounts suggest rain specialists often acquire the rain spirit or wind, not through gradual training or dance, but through a sudden, dramatic, often traumatic event.
Like what?
Being struck by lightning.
Seriously? They get hit by lightning and that gives them power.
That's the tradition. Surviving a lightning strike is seen as a forceful impartation of power. It's interesting, this lightning connection also showed up with some Bushman groups like the Zegwi, so it's a shared concept across the wider Khoisan landscape.
What happens after someone is struck and survives?
It throws them into a kind of altered state. They're said to run naked into the wilderness for several days, completely detached, existing in another world. This ordeal seems to solidify the transformation, conferring the rainmaking ability.
Wow. Less a training, more a trial by ordeal. And their initiation rituals sound pretty intense too, involving goat's blood.
Yes, the training initiation for a new rainmaker under a senior one could involve this ritual. The senior rainman sacrifices a goat, letting the blood fill 4 holes dug in the earth.
4 holes, why 4?
The initiates drink the blood from the first 3 holes. This seems to be about absorbing the life force, the potency, connecting them to the rain spirit. But the 4th hole is specifically left for the dead spirit or the ancestral source of the rain power.
Ah, so feeding the spirit source while the initiates take the active power.
Exactly. It's about managing that potent, potentially dangerous connection to the source, keeping things in balance.
How does the Ko pantheon, their named deities, fit in? We heard about Golub as a source of sickness for the San.
The Ko traditions tend to have a slightly more defined pantheon, though still fluid. There's Suigoab, often seen as the high god, embodying both good and bad, a kind of collective force.
And others.
Heitzi-Ibeb is another important figure, linked more to individual fate, the moon, cycles of death and rebirth, often described as a shapeshifter. And yes, Goab appears here too, often seen as the devil, the primary source of sickness and misfortune.
But it's not always clear-cut divisions.
No. One informant made a really telling comment. The names for the god and the devil or the ghost might be 2, but the thing is one. It suggests that even with named deities, the underlying principle might still be this dualistic unified potency, similar to the sand view.
Right. So beyond trance and rainmaking, there are other shared healing methods across Khoisan groups, right? Non-trance techniques, like dealing with Aizana.
Ah, yes, Aisina. That's the sickness believed to be caused by internal organs getting misplaced.
Misplaced organs, how does that work?
Well, an organ like the Arab, which isn't a precise anatomical match for us, maybe liver, maybe intestines, maybe more of an emotional center in the gut, was thought to literally move around inside the body, causing chronic problems.
So the Arab is both physical and sort of spiritual or emotional.
Exactly. It's a center of balance. If it's out of place, you get sick. The treatment wasn't spiritual exorcism, but physical manipulation.
How do they treat it?
Highly skilled massage. Specialists were trained to feel where the Arab was and gently guide it back to its proper position. Sometimes it was simpler, just placing a heavy stone on the abdomen for a while, using weight to encourage it back.
So physical treatment for a conceptually understood problem, that's fascinating. And what about plants? Buchu seems important.
Hugely important. Buchu, or sai as it's sometimes called, is this aromatic plant mixture used for centuries. Its power lies in its strong smell.
The smell carries the potency.
That's the idea. The aroma, the sai, penetrates the body and encourages everything inside to find its right place. It promotes flow, alignment, wakes up the body's systems. It's about restoring internal harmony.
Flow and alignment, that brings us back to the idea of wind, doesn't it? As a carrier.
Wind is absolutely central. It's the life principle, it's breath, it's identity, and crucially, it's how potency, good or bad, gets transferred.
So you can get sick from someone else's wind. Or the wind of the dead.
Yes, exactly. A bad influence, sickness, misfortune can literally travel on the wind from the bed or even from living people with negative intent or power.
And healers combat this how? We mentioned expelling sickness.
Right. After sucking out the illness, they have to get rid of that bad wind. This often involves a forceful belch, the word gai again, linking to rising potency or throwing the hands up, physically casting the sickness away. This is seen across Nama, Damara, and Bushman practices.
And potency travels in other ways too. Saliva.
Yes, saliva, sweat, bodily fluids carry the essence. There's a Zam story where a girl's saliva, if it touched a hunter's bow, could cool it, making it useless. Her essence transferred and neutralized the bow's power.
It all comes back to this transferable essence or potency. And the idea of arrows causing sickness seems universal too.
It really ties things together. Found historically right across the groups, Zam, Bergdamara, Naro, Duhoan. These invisible arrows sent by spirits like Gawa aren't just metaphors for pain.
You're the delivery mechanism for the harmful potency.
Exactly. They transmit the negative essence. And the healer, in turn, has to fight back, sometimes described as firing their own defensive arrows into the spirit world. It's deeply embedded, even in language.
Up so.
In Ko, the word go means arrow, but it also means to destroy or annihilate. And for the Juhon, the numb often boils up because the healer feels pierced by these invisible arrows. The pain triggers the need to generate their own counter-potency. #Tag4, historical evolution and modern context.
It's incredible that these beliefs, these practices have persisted for so long, especially given the history of Southern Africa. The colonial period must have been devastating.
Absolutely devastating. The arrival of herders, and then especially the Dutch from 1652 onwards, it led to immense conflict, genocide, massive loss of land, and traditional hunting grounds for the San. Their entire way of life was fundamentally threatened.
And yet, the core beliefs survived.
Resilience and a kind of, well, cultural flexibility. Early anthropologists often predicted that traditional beliefs would just vanish under the pressure of colonialism and missionization. They assumed acculturation meant replacement.
But that's not what happened.
Not entirely. More recent work shows this amazing capacity for what's called ideational flexibility. People could hold on to core Khoisan beliefs alongside adopting elements of, say, Christianity.
So they could be Christian but still practice the healing dance.
Precisely. There are examples like the Damara in Sesfontaine who identify as Christian but continue the Eris dance tradition. The core concepts, potency, trance, spiritual causes of illness, seem adaptable. They might use Christian terminology sometimes, but the underlying cosmological framework often remains intact.
What about new diseases? Surely things like AIDS or TB don't fit the misplaced organ or spirit arrow model?
Right, that's a major adaptation. The traditional explanations still apply to certain kinds of ailments, the ones felt to be of the ancestors or spiritual in origin. But for new, widespread diseases like HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, the approach shifts.
How does it shift?
There's a greater focus now on herbal remedies, particularly bitter plants like koreb, aloe, or osana. The explanation often given is that these plants are needed to clean the blood, reflecting a more modern physiological understanding, while still using indigenous plant knowledge.
So adapting the practice to the perceived nature of the illness. And today, there are organizations actively working to support this continuity, like Kwatu.
Yes, Kwatu Sen Center is a really important example. They're focused on several things: restoring the land, preserving and sharing sand culture, but also creating sustainable livelihoods that are actually based on traditional knowledge.
How do they do that?
Well, conservation is a big part. They use traditional plant knowledge, passed down through storytelling, to restore the local ecosystem. This brings back game, allowing for some controlled traditional hunting and gathering, reconnecting people to the land.
And they link this to the modern economy.
Very cleverly. They have a restaurant project, Food from Our Ancestors. They serve local venison, use indigenous plants grown on their land, and weave the stories and cultural significance into the dining experience.
So food becomes a way to share culture and generate income.
Exactly. It makes the cultural heritage economically valuable, especially through tourism. It creates a real incentive for young people to learn and maintain these traditions, including things like the healing dance, which is increasingly a focus for visitors interested in authentic cultural experiences. It helps the knowledge survive and even thrive.
It gives the gaze, that internal power, a space to keep standing up, generation after generation. #tag outro.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, from the incredibly ancient roots of sand philosophy, this idea of a world without a natural-supernatural divide,
To the intense boiling energy of numb in the trance dance, the physical techniques of healing, like massage for Aisna.
comparing with Khoi shamanism, the role of lightning, the deities, and looking at how these traditions are adapting and surviving today, partly thanks to places like Kwatu.
And for me, the most profound takeaway is how deeply this worldview permeates everything, right down to the structure of their language. It's not just what they believe, but how they think and speak about the world.
That's the crucial link, isn't it? This idea that thought is tied to immediate, lived, participatory experience. We touched on how some Bushman languages don't rigidly separate nouns and verbs in the way English does.
Right, the example of na meaning both head and to see.
Exactly. The object and its primary function or action are fused. The head is seeing, in a way, or describing walking not as an abstract action, but as kneeing, locating the action intrinsically within the body part.
It's a completely different cognitive map, less abstract, more embodied.
Very much so. It reflects a fundamentally participatory relationship with the world, with their own bodies, that's quite different from the often detached, analytical stance embedded in, say, standard English grammar. It's not just vocabulary, it reflects a way of being.
Which leaves us with a question for you, listening.
Yes. Thinking about your own language, English, or whatever it may be, with its clear subjects, verbs, objects, in what ways does that very structure perhaps limit or maybe expand how you perceive connection, power, and aliveness in the world around you? Something to think about.
Thanks for tuning into Sonara's Deep Dive. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any of our future episodes. I bring you fresh content every week. Thanks for listening.